Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for checking out the debut episode of One Missing, One Murdered, All Indigenous, which is a true crime podcast dedicated to true crime involving Indigenous people. And I want to say thank you so much to everybody that checked out the preview episode of my sit-down with Janet Franson, who is the creator of Lost and Missing in Indian Country. Great interview, and like I said, I can't thank everybody so much for checking it out and showing your support. But now that that's out of the way, I've got a great show lined up for you guys, a really great interview, as well as talking about two cases involving Indigenous people. Our first case will be talking about the unsolved homicide of Lakota Rea Renville. And following that, we'll be talking about the disappearance of Alyssa Angelique McLemore, as well as a bonus interview with her aunt Tina Russell. Like I said, great big thank you to everybody that tuned in, and I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Going forward, we will be talking about two cases individually. I got very fortunate to sit down and talk to Tina and to help give her side of the story as to what happened, to really give a point of view as to what was going on with the disappearance of Alyssa. But not to give out too much spoilers, let's kick off the show right now. All right, everybody. Well, let's kick our show off by talking about our first case, which is the unsolved homicide of Lakota Rea Renville. Now, Lakota Rea Renville was a young indigenous woman from the Sisseton Wahpeton Sioux tribe, which is located in the northeastern part of South Dakota on the Lake Traverse Reservation. Now, she was described by her sister Waynette Renville as shy. I mean, so shy that even on the day of her graduation, she was reluctant to even walk across the stage. Quote, she was a straight-laced girl who didn't smoke cigarettes, drink, or take drugs. And that's all from her sister Waynette. Obviously would know a lot about her sister. I'm not exactly sure as to how close they really were. But I mean, definitely coming from somebody that would have known you that long would kind of be a testament to see who she is, especially, you know, if she's this shy to even walk across the stage. I mean, really speaks to the kind of person that she was in that way. Now, in 2003, she actually met a man online, which really developed into a relationship. And following soon after that, her life would take a hugely dramatic turn when she actually decided to move from her home in South Dakota all the way down to Kansas City, Missouri with her boyfriend. Now, that's about a 517-mile difference. So she goes from being this very shy, won't walk across the stage to get her diploma. She's doesn't smoke, she doesn't drink, she don't do drugs, but all of a sudden she meets a man who she cares for enough that she's going to actually uproot herself from her safety net or the safety of her own home all the way down, like I said, about 517 miles. And now that would really make anybody nervous, especially for somebody who is very shy like Lakota, and rightfully so. It made her relatives very nervous for her safety. But Lakota actually told her sister that her boyfriend had 2 jobs and that she wouldn't even have to work at all. And other than that reassurance, I mean, she kept most of her life secret from her family. That's about as much information as I've come across in my research. Now, fast forward a couple of years, on October 16th in 2005, a body had been discovered at an illegal dump site in a gravel pit near the 92nd 100 block of Pitcher Road, which is near Blue Ridge Cutoff in Independence, Missouri. And unfortunately, the body was confirmed to be that of then 22-year-old Lakota Rea Renville. Now, her body had actually been discovered naked. Her body was actually covered in bruises, and she was also wrapped in a carpet padding and rolled up in a, quote, Southwestern-style blanket with only her head being exposed. Now, this blanket, it looks like a Pendleton-style blanket, and it looks like it's got like a gray desert background with like tan patterns and a tan cattle skull on it. Now, according to the investigating police, they're actually withholding a lot of details of just how Lakota was murdered. I mean, citing that their investigation is still ongoing to this day, but they would say that her death was, quote, brutal and vicious. But I mean, with her body being discovered naked and covered in bruises, I mean, I think that's kind of a given as far as this case is concerned. Now, there was some physical evidence that was gathered, including what was referred to as, quote, basically DNA, which was actually found on the carpet padding itself. The sample has actually been reported to have been tested against 8 people, but they were later cleared. But as far as I can see, they haven't really released as to who these people might have been or possible suspects since that point. Now, the police actually believe that Lakota had actually been killed in a separate location from where her body was eventually discovered, which basically says that they believe that she had actually been placed in that pit. Now, a witness also stepped forward reporting seeing a brown early 1990s model Ford Explorer with Missouri license plates around the area where her body had been discovered, but it's really unclear as to whether or not the vehicle had anything to do with Lakota's body being there, or even if it had anything really to do with the homicide itself. Now, police are actually saying that Lakota was involved in prostitution along Independence Avenue in Kansas City area. But her sister, Wynette, actually believes that her sister was a victim of sex trafficking. Quote, she had to have been forced into that line of work, she says. And again, coming from somebody who is that close to her sister and not knowing what really was going on within those following years when she moved down, I mean, her sister has really been a big advocate, saying that this is not something that Lakota would have voluntarily done. Now, the police actually say that the last person to exploit Lakota has been interviewed, but they've been cleared of any involvement in her death. Now, for 5 years, Wynette called the police every week hoping for a new tip or DNA would lead to Lakota's killer. I mean, she does not want her sister forgotten at all. Quote, she was loved, Wynette says. She had lots of friends and family. And in 2017, she says her sister's boyfriend actually contacted and denied having anything to do with Lakota's death. Wynette has little hope now that the case will ever be solved. And in 2006, the people held a traditional ceremony at the gravel pit where her body was found in order to bring peace to Lakota's spirit. She was actually taken home and buried on her South Dakota reservation, where her headstone is actually engraved with an angel. A quote from Wynette says, "We're not the same anymore. It's agonizing to not know who did that and why they did that." At first, Wynette says she was angry with the world because of Lakota's murder. Now, she says she feels differently, believing that whoever killed her sister, quote, will deal with this either in this lifetime or the next. Now, if you or someone you know has any information about the murder of Lakota Rea Renville, I strongly encourage you to contact the Independence Police at 816-325-7330. Also, the Kansas City Metro Crime Stoppers, which is 816-474-84. Also, the Kansas City Metro Crime Stoppers tip line, which is 816-474-8477, or visit their website, which is capital KCCrimestoppers.com. Or check out the mobile app, which is p3tips.com.
Coronavirus, better known as COVID-19, has spread throughout the world. There are a few ways to help lower the spread of this respiratory virus. Wash your hands no less than 20 seconds at a time. Avoid touching your face, including mouth, nose, and eyes. Remember to cover your coughs and sneezes. Practice social distancing by limiting your interactions with people. Avoid gatherings of people in groups of 10 or more, or simply stay at home. Remember to always clean and disinfect any and all high-touch surfaces. Avoid interactions with people who may be sick, except for getting medical attention. Monitor your symptoms and consult with your doctor over the phone. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/COVID-19.
All right, everybody. Now let's get right back into the show by talking about the case of Alyssa Angelique McLemore.
Now, I want to take you back, all the way back to 2009, to discuss the disappearance of Alyssa Angelique McLemore. Alyssa was a 21-year-old indigenous woman of Aleutian as well as African descent. Now, she lived up in Kent, Washington, along with her grandmother, Barbara, and her mother, Gracie McLemore, who was diagnosed with an autoimmune rheumatic disease known as scleroderma. Now, scleroderma is, from what I've learned, it's a disease that chronically affects all of the connective tissue in the body. This is a disease that really, it ranges from person to person, but definitely the symptoms that her mother was facing at the time definitely required around-the-clock care, which is why Alyssa and her grandmother were taking care of her around the clock. Definitely, family obviously comes first, and so, this is a lot to deal with, being 21, and having kind of the world in front of you. But if you really want to get a good picture as to what Alyssa's mom was going through, I definitely urge you all to look up the Johns Hopkins University, even the Scleroderma Foundation, just to kind of get a good picture as to what Alyssa and her mother, as well as her grandmother, were really dealing with at this time. And on top of all of that, helping her grandmother, care for her mom, she also had a 3-year-old daughter, which she shared with her boyfriend. So let's kind of take a step back. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot that's going on in your life. You've got a 3-year-old, you've got a boyfriend, you've got a sick mother. You're taking care of her with your grandmother. I mean, definitely this is, this kind of paints a good picture as to what Alyssa's really about. She's obviously dedicated a lot of her time and a lot of attention to her family. So, I mean, I think that kind of sets a good picture as to just who this person really is. Now, on April 9th of that year, Alyssa was actually spending time with her daughter and her boyfriend at the time. When around 6:30 that night, she had actually received a phone call from her grandmother. Now, her grandmother called to let her know that her mother's condition had actually gotten worse and really had urged her to come home as soon as possible. And after receiving that phone call, she told her grandmother that she'd be right there. And this is where it really drops off. Unfortunately for everybody, not just Alyssa's family, but family, friends, everything, that would be the last time that anybody from Alyssa's family would ever hear from her again. Now, just 3 days later, Gracie McLemore would actually succumb to her illness of scleroderma and tragically lost her battle. Now, the family went to the police to report her missing, but were actually told that there really wasn't anything that could be done until she had been missing for at least 24 hours. Now, that's going to be a topic that we talk about a lot, is the 24-hour rule when it comes to our missing cases, but definitely this is a common theme that we're going to run into a lot. But, I mean, they go to her, they go to the police, they talk to her, they let them know that she's missing, but again, from everything that I've learned and everything that I've run into when it comes to not only research, but just, interactions and hearing a lot of cases. I mean, she's a 21-year-old female, is legally far off being an adult. So, I mean, the police aren't too worried about that. And when it comes to adults disappearing, I mean, definitely there is a 24-hour rule. But, I mean, again, she's a grown adult, and some departments aren't necessarily too worried about somebody that's that old disappearing. But again, as a concerned family member, they did go and report. Now, everything that I've researched about this, a couple of reports have come through talking about mentioning a really strange phone call to the 911 dispatch up in Kent, Washington dispatch. The call was reported to have only lasted for about 10 seconds. Dispatchers, reporting that there was a woman's voice calling out for help, but unfortunately, it just cut off. It just abruptly cut off. Now, the police were able to confirm later on that the call had been made from Alyssa's phone. Now, at the time, Alyssa had actually owned a BlackBerry phone, but unfortunately, at that time, the phone model that she had did not have a GPS tracker, so they were not able to really get a lock as to where Alyssa might be. And shortly after that, the phone later actually went out of service. I mean, the police are presuming that the phone, may have died, or I mean, it might have been destroyed, but who knows? Nobody really knows as to exactly what happened to the phone. Now, from everything that I've read, the police were never able to really accurately confirm that the call had been made from Alyssa, the phone call that had been made to the 911. They were never able to fully confirm that. Like I said, a few reports, all the reports that I've read were not able to really confirm it. Now, very early on in the investigation, a couple of sightings of Alyssa were reported to the police. One witness actually said that they saw Alyssa on the day that she had disappeared. She reportedly was seen near 30th Avenue South and Kent Des Moines Road, which is on Kent's West Hill. And she was approached by what the witness described as a green 1990s model pickup truck. Now, the witness believed that the truck had to have had out-of-state license plates. Another witness actually came forward to say that they had seen Alyssa with a Caucasian male who looked like to be in his 50s and 60s, around 5 to 8 inches tall, and around 175 to 185 pounds. The man reportedly drove a green pickup truck and seemed to have had some kind of connection with Alyssa. And that, unfortunately, is where the case stands today. I mean, the police haven't really released any more information in the following decade that's happened. But from everything that I've read, that, the police do have, quote unquote, binders full of information regarding this case. Alyssa is actually considered to be missing under suspicious circumstances, and authorities also believe that foul play might have been involved in her disappearance. To this day, the case is still ongoing. Now, there have been a few theories over the years kind of speculating as to what may have happened to Alyssa. One theory is that she simply just left. She left her own life behind. She left everything behind and she went off to start somewhere else. You know, you got to think, though, you got to think of everything that she's leaving behind. You know, she's got a sick, dying mother, obviously has a lot of family in the area, not, you know, just her grandmother, as well as the biggest one of all, a 3-year-old daughter. So kind of let that sink in a little bit, that this person decided to just walk away from all of that. She just simply left. But a lot of people that knew Alyssa, including her family, her friends, just say that she would never do that, ever. The thought that she might just leave. I mean, even her own boyfriend at the time described her as a devoted parent who wouldn't even abandon her daughter. So, I mean, take that theory for what it's worth. Like I said, from everything I've read and the people that I've talked to about this case, that simply just wasn't an option, period. Now, another theory that has come up over the years is that Alyssa may have been a victim of human sex trafficking. The human sex trafficking is very big in the indigenous community and is believed to really contribute to a lot of missing indigenous women. So take that for what it's worth as well. That's another theory that's out there. But, you know, there's been several other theories over the years involving what could have actually happened to Alyssa. I mean, like I said, the police actually believe that there may have been foul play as well. So, I mean, who knows? It's without confirmation, we'll never truly know as to what really happened to Alyssa. But in the following years, Alyssa's aunt, Tina Russell, has actually been a very, very huge advocate in the years following her disappearance. And actually, in a May 1st, 2009 article, which was published in The Guardian, titled "Sister, Where Did You Go? The Native American Women Disappearing from U.S. Cities," Russell was interviewed and gave some insights that hadn't fully been talked about. In the days and weeks after Alyssa's disappearance, Russell remembers police taking a pair of long white go-go boots that had belonged to Alyssa. They used this to take DNA samples. And talking to the family about Alyssa's life, you know, some of the questions that were asked were pertaining to who Alyssa might have actually been in contact with. I mean, including friends, associates, you know, as well as if she may have done drugs or any of that sort of thing. So, and it actually took 2 years before DNA from the family was collected and submitted to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, which is basically a big clearinghouse for missing, unidentified, and unclaimed person cases in the U.S. Now, according to Detective Brendan Wales of Kent Police, he's actually been on the case for about 8 years now. Washington state law actually requires this be done 30 days or whenever criminal activity is suspected. So, now, it's not exactly known why, but a lot of people believe that because of Alyssa's appearance, her ethnicity was recorded as actually Asian and not Native American in her police file. And it would actually take 7 years to correct this mistake. Now, racial misclassification is a huge common problem in police investigations, and it actually contributes to the lack of accurate and consistent data collection in cases such as Alyssa's. In fact, possibly due to her racial misclassification, her disappearance wasn't even included in the Urban Indian Health Institute report. Now, in June 2019, the Homeward Bound program, in association with the Washington State Patrol and Camway Transportation, unveiled a trailer which displays 3 photos of Alyssa, along with the message, quote, "Please help find me." Also with a number to call, which is 1-800-THE-LOST, and a link with details. Quote, "We want to bring attention to the missing Native American women and children across the country," said Carrie Gordon, a State Patrol spokeswoman. Quote, "and have her family know that we are not giving up." Now, Alyssa's Aunt Tina and her family were excited about the new trailers and also credited the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women movement. Lori Glavlin, a safety manager of Camway, said that they're planning to release 3 trailers that bear photos of Alyssa. They're actually going to service for about 4 to 7 years, traveling throughout the region. I mean, possibly even into Idaho, Nevada, Montana, just really depending on the client and the shipment. But definitely this is a big step to getting Alyssa's case out there and getting her picture out there known for people to see. Quote, "There's many natives and we just want to keep sharing the platform and attention," Russell said. "We don't want to just focus on us. This is just one step in the right direction. There's a lot of work to do and there's a long way to go, but we're happy to lead the way. And things are looking up." Russell was also quoted saying, "We're very encouraged. If Alyssa could hear us or see anything written about her, I want her to know we are coming. We're doing our best to find her. We're going to find her, dead or alive. She's coming home, and I can feel it in my bones." Anyone with any information about Alyssa's disappearance or know anything is strongly encouraged to call 911 or to contact the Kent Police Department tip line, which is 253-856-5808. Callers, you may remain anonymous.
All right, everybody. Well, let's jump right into that interview. Like I said at the top of the show, I did get an opportunity to sit down and talk with Tina to really get an insight as to what it was like during that time when Alyssa went missing. And Tina will actually go through and answer some of the questions that are left unanswered as far as my research. I actually did my recording pre-conversation with Tina. So without further ado, let's just get right into that. And I hope you all enjoy this great interview with Tina, who I've actually gotten to know very well over the course of the time that we've been talking. And I consider her a very close friend. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're joined today, special guest Tina Russell, who's actually Alyssa's aunt, who's been very proactive with what she's, with the search going forward, continuing Alyssa's story. And today we have the honor of talking to Tina. How are you doing today, Tina?
I'm good, Fred. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Now, you and I have had we've had a few conversations off air, and we've gotten to really know each other over the last few weeks and stuff like that. So today we'll have you talk from your point of view to kind of give sort of a first person's view as to, those few hours and those few days leading up to and following Alyssa's disappearance, and just kind of giving everybody a good idea as to, what was really going on behind the scenes. Like I said, we know the story, but I think that our listeners will definitely benefit from hearing what it is and what it was like during all of that time.
It was a complete whirlwind of chaos. Alyssa's mom was really, really sick, and at this point, she was getting ready to pass. So my sister's passing, and Alyssa's missing. When the police initially came to look for Alyssa, she had a warrant for her arrest. And so I think the police kind of treated us as if we were, like, hiding Alyssa or something, like not trying to have her arrested or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it just seems like they didn't really care too much. 3 days after Alyssa came up missing, my sister died. So we're now looking for Alyssa. We're dealing with the death. And it was just complete chaos. We have the media coming at this point, a house full of kids. It was just completely crazy. Alyssa, she was 21. She was, for me, I'm like a mother figure for Alyssa. My mom and I raised Alyssa. So, she would drink and, whatever drugs she was doing. She wasn't going to tell me that part of her business. But she was 21. And she did, drink and go out clubbing. However, when my mom, or whenever we called Alyssa and told her something about her mom or her daughter, she would be sure to come home. And this particular day, she never came home. There was a 911 call placed from her phone. So at this point, my sister's dying, Alyssa's missing, and my sister and I, we have to deal not only with the police, now we have to deal with obituaries and, literally planning funeral homes, things like that. So we get a family representative. Now, this family representative, who we thought was a good friend, was going talking to people and collecting information and things like that. And this went on for about, I'd say, a couple months, to the point one day I just asked her, like, yo, what's in that notebook over there? Who have you been talking to? What kind of information do you have? And she wouldn't share it with us. So at that point, she blocked me and we weren't friends anymore. But I never found out what was in this notebook. Now, flash forward, it's 11 years later, people move, things disappear, life happens, Mm-hmm. But if she doesn't still have this notebook, she has a memory. If somebody says a name or says a place, it should jog her memory, and I just feel like we're not getting justice because the police aren't talking to this lady. They know her name. I have her phone number. I've recently spoken to her since then, and she remembers stuff, but they haven't taken the time to talk to her. There's been very few leads. Oh, okay, so basically, I feel like the police is still doing an injustice for us.
Mm-hmm.
However, my detective is doing as much as he can do, so I don't want to be unfair to him, because I really can call this new detective like anytime with any information, and he'll come meet me, and talk to me or whatever it is that I suggest. So I don't want to be unfair to this new detective. For the last 8 years up until this new detective, actually the last 9 years up until this new detective, it wasn't like that. There was no communication from the police. Every time there's a dead body in the news, until they say it's a male or a female, particularly if it's a male, okay, you could breathe.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a female, then you have to call the coroner. They don't call you and say, hey, that wasn't Alyssa. You have to call and trace the body. I've talked to every coroner from one state of Washington, in the state to the other, literally. And, I just feel like that's something that a family member shouldn't have to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's a lot. There's so much. My mind is just jumping from situation. So I might have kind of lost track. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Other point was.
Well, I mean, I kind of want to go back a little bit. Like, now you said kind of talk a little bit about, like I said, Alyssa's mom was definitely sick. Was Alyssa like regularly taking care of her mom?
Yes, Alyssa took care of her mom and her daughter for the most part. My sister was very picky on who took care of her, but her and Alyssa were really close. Alyssa had the baby, so the baby kind of kept my sister going. Like, Alyssa slept in the bed with her mom and the baby, pretty much up until her final days that they had together. She was very, very good with her mom. She took make sure her mom made it to the doctors, things like that.
So did Alyssa's baby, did they share the same house with Alyssa's mom and grandmother?
Yes. So Alyssa lived with her mother. And my mother and Alyssa took care of Alyssa's mother. So it was the grandma, and then my sister, who's Alyssa's mom, Alyssa, Nevaeh, and Albert.
Oh, okay. So they all shared that house together.
And Albert would be Nevaeh's dad. Yes. There was something in the paper that said that Albert had always had custody of Nevaeh. This and that. That was false. Albert did not have custody of Nevaeh. The only reason I found out that Albert had custody is because he sent Alyssa a letter in the mail. At this point, she's been missing for, I'd say, a year.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I'm going to open the letter and see what it says. And it was paper saying that Albert had custody. And it literally said how he went in there and lied to the judge and this and that. So I wrote the DA letter and was like, how could you grant custody when she's missing? And they never responded or anything, but he had custody. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was sad for Nevaeh to leave, but every child needs their parent.
Right.
So she only had one parent missing, so we didn't want to, traumatize her like that, not let her have both of her parents. So we just agreed to let her go, and she's doing good. She's doing really good. She's an AB student. She's hit honor roll a couple times, so she's doing well.
That's good.
She still thinks about her mom, and, she just made posts for her 11-year anniversary of missing. She made a good post for her mom, and, things like that. For a long time, we didn't talk about her mom in front of her.
Mm-hmm.
And one day she was like, well, you guys don't love and miss my mom? Like, nobody talks about her. And everybody's, like, face dropped, like, that we were protecting you, like, not talking about her. And she noticed that, and that didn't go over well.
Well, I mean,
so after that, we just started keeping it really real, everything really real with her. As far as and teaching her, she comes along the search. Now that she's older, she doesn't do as much as she did when she was younger, but we really involved her, like, in our searches, things like that. Now that she's older, we kind of protect her more, just a preference. She's a teenager, so
I
try to keep her a little more protected.
I have a niece as well, so I know how that goes. But so kind of go back a little bit. I mean, you said that anytime anything would happen with Alyssa's mom, that she was usually pretty good about showing up and stuff like that. What was her travel situation like? Did she have a vehicle of her own?
Alyssa did not have a vehicle of her own. She had a lot of friends, so sometimes her friends would pick her up. Sometimes she would catch the bus. I guess it just depended on how bad she wanted to get to where she was going. Back then, Uber and Lyft weren't quite popular. They didn't have that 10 years or 11 years ago. So, I mean, Alyssa was 21, and like I said, my sister was sick, so I didn't really focus in on Alyssa in her life. I just thought, you never think it's going to happen to your family.
Right.
You never think that. And so I wasn't really focused on that, how she's getting around and where she's going and this and that. Sometimes I would ask her, she'd laugh at me, I'm grown. I did the same thing to her, so fair exchange, I guess. But now I know what I know. I mean, everybody. But it was a learning lesson through Alyssa, and it helps, the younger kids now understand why we are like we are, asking questions and things.
So exactly when did you guys become aware that Alyssa was missing?
Well, the police had came, and they asked my mom if Alyssa was there. And like I said, we kind of got the thing, like they weren't believing us. And then that was like April 8th. So April 9th, was it April 7th? Maybe it was the 7th. I don't really remember the dates. Like I said, everything was so crazy. But a couple of days later, we just called her in as missing, and they said that she could be gone. She's an adult, this and that. And initially, I don't think they took our report until the 911 call actually was discovered. And once the 911 call hit, then it kind of gave us a little bit more attention.
Now, have you been able to actually hear that phone call?
No, I have requested to hear that phone call. So, like I said, when all this happened, we got a family representative. And at that point, they were trying to discover if that was really Alyssa. So they did let people listen to the tape, the family representative and another close friend of Alyssa's. And they came back and told us it's definitely Alyssa. So, we kind of took their word for it. Basically, we did take their word for it. And then since then, it's become the main part of evidence, or one of the main keys in evidence. And so they won't let anybody hear it. I've been asking for it just about a year now. And they keep saying it's evidence, so they won't let anybody else hear it now. They tried to say no one heard it, but I called them on their BS and named the people that heard it. So then they had to, okay, these people heard it. Okay, well, why can't I hear it? Well, you will, but right now it's evidence. So, I don't know. But, however, whatever's on that 911 tape, the streets knows, because the streets are talking about it. There are certain details that's on that tape that we never, as a family, heard about until just about 3 months ago. And I asked the detective, and he verified that it is true that that information is on the tape. So Alyssa's story is definitely being talked about. Now, when you say streets, do you mean like friends out in the community? They're not exactly my friends. I don't really know the people that know people that know people that know me.
Oh, okay.
That's how word travels,
Okay.
Kind of like, being on the reservation. You tell one person, two people that ain't your family, then everybody on the reservation knows your business in about 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
That's just how it works. So it's pretty much the same thing, with my circle pretty much. But these people are friends of friends of friends. So, but when it came to verifying it, like I said, I went straight to the detective. Hey, this is what I heard, and hey, this is what else I heard, and the streets talking. Yes or no, and don't lie to me. If you lie, you're going to break trust. So he told me the truth. Okay, now if the streets are talking, then I shouldn't know. I mean, if the streets weren't talking, then I shouldn't know. So you should know more than what I'm finding out. But it's like they want me to find out all I can and then tell them what I know. No, that's not how it's supposed to be.
Right.
It's really not. I mean, of course I'm going to try to find out all I can, but they should be trying too. But they're not going to take any officers and put them on a 10-year-old case, pretty much what I was told.
Right. I kind of want to go back a little bit, just what you said right there, like you said, building trust with the current detective that you've got now. I mean, I've had conversations with Janet Franson. She runs the Lost in Missing in Indian Country, and she mentioned that as a retired homicide investigator, that's a big deal, is to have that trust and to kind of build that up. So I kind of wanted to kind of highlight that like, when it comes to law enforcement, and we've talked about this on the show, a lot about, why these cases go under the radar so much is because, there is sort of a barrier of either mistrust or like you just said, in within the reservation or the indigenous community, it's a very tight knit group. people, like you just said, people talk, people know people, and if you didn't know that person, then you know somebody that did, and and so on and so forth.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
kind of curious about this. Have you or like your family ever kind of run into kind of I don't really necessarily want to, I don't know the right word for it, but some kind of like, it felt like a snag when it came to Alyssa's case because she was Indigenous?
I feel like her whole case was, the first thing is even getting her identified as Indigenous. When you look at Alyssa, you can't really tell that she is. So they had her listed as Asian, and that took like 8 years to fix. So there was one thing right there, just, even getting her properly identified. Because now if she's not properly identified, well, they're saying they're finding an Asian body, so now I have to call looking for an Asian body, even though my niece is Asian. But that's what they had her down as for 8 years. It's crazy. There's so many different layers of a person coming up missing. Oh gosh.
Right, and it's frustrating. Like we just said, as it's one of the reasons why Alyssa's case really jumped out at me is because there's so much coverage. There's been so much press about it, but 11 going on 11 years now. I mean, she's been missing with very little information that's been released. I understand that it's an open investigation at this point, but at the same time, it's we run into this a lot. Not just with Alyssa's case, but with hundreds and thousands of other Indigenous women missing, murdered, or not just the women, to just the Indigenous people in general. We run into this big problem of barriers, like I said, like racial misclassification, or one of the big things that I've run into a lot when it comes to missing cases is the 24-hour rule. Now, I've talked to quite a few sources. Some say that's BS. Some say that it's not. I mean, it sounds like it's just kind of like a case-by-case basis when it comes to missing persons cases as to when you should report.
And that's true, because the police departments aren't on the same page. The State Patrol will sit and tell you, oh, no, they have to take your report when you come. But then you go to your local police department and they don't take your report. Or they tell you, come back a couple of days later. It's like everybody's not on the same page. They have these meetings, and they talk about problem solve. How can they do it? But you keep having these meetings instead of having a meeting and putting something into action and see if it works already or not. They just keep having meetings. You can spend the whole year having meetings and haven't put out one of these things we talked about in a meeting into action. So that's letting us know that you just talk. You see what I'm saying? It's just talk, communication. And like I said, this police department doesn't agree with State Patrol and they're all not on the same page. So who are we supposed to listen to when you guys are talking if you guys aren't even on the same page? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it becomes kind of like what Janet referred to as hot potato when it comes to these cases. It's a jumble between one jurisdiction saying, basically tossing this case to another jurisdiction. I mean, you've got...
I like that Janet person. Yeah, she's on it. I like that.
Yeah, it's basically, one jurisdiction. You got, one county playing hot potato saying, oh, it's this county, or it's counties with highway patrol, or state, or federal with Indigenous cases. I mean, federal is kind of what we have here as well. So I mean, like I said, it's just jurisdictional things, like you said, playing hot potato with these cases like that.
Exactly.
So a couple of things about the last sightings of Alyssa. Now, some of there was, from what I read, the two can almost be the same. They can almost be the same witness, kind of talking about how they had seen Alyssa talking to somebody appeared to be in their 50s, 60s, in a green truck near 30th Avenue South and Kent Des Moines Road. Mm-hmm. Do you have any comment on that?
That is true. That is the last time Alyssa was supposedly seen. Again, the streets have a whole different story, but I can't really go into what I do know or other things that are coming in. However, that is the last official sighting that we heard. Right there's different freeways. So you can go to I-5 north or south from there. If you go straight down that hill, you'll run into another set of freeways, which takes you to 167. If you go south, you can hit another freeway, you know. So there's all kind of ways that they could have left there. However, from day one, we've always been going back to that area, continuously going back, talking to the people. A lot of people have moved in 10 years, but some of the businesses are still there and just trying to refresh people's memory of Alyssa. So, yeah, that is the last place that officially we heard she was seen at, talking to somebody in a green truck.
Now, a couple of the theories over the years that have come up, obviously one of the biggest ones would be that Alyssa just simply walked away from her life and started new.
If somebody calls for help, chances are they didn't leave on their own. She made a 911 tape, and from what I understand, she was screaming, and it was a piercing scream asking for help. And then her phone went dead. So I don't believe that Alyssa just walked away from her life. Alyssa was addicted to her mother, my mother, her daughter, Albert, her house. She was addicted to everybody in that house. Now, you know, like I know, any kind of addiction, you can't just cut off at the drop of a dime.
Right.
She could not just stop calling her mom, stop calling her grandma, stop calling her baby dad, stop, you know, checking on her daughter. That's not, I don't believe that. I believe Alyssa is somewhere either being held against her will, or she's perhaps somewhere deceased and we just haven't found her. And I pray every day that plan B or the second one is not the one, but it's been a long time and I just don't know. And I try not to let my mind wander like that because then it kind of makes me sad and depressed, back to wondering what can I do, what didn't I do, you know. To be honest, like I said, there's a little jealousy in me when other family members do find their loved one, you know. It's kind of sad to say, and it's, you know, but it's my reality. Sometimes I get sad, I get jealous, like, why can't we just find Alyssa? Because I'm living trauma. I'm watching generational trauma happen. You know, like I said, my grandma's 100 years old. My youngest one that understands is 6 years old. So from 6 to 100, my whole generation is missing Alyssa. I don't want the next generation out there looking for her. I'm 49 years old, so, you know, the next generation is going to be her own daughter, you know, my grandkids looking for Alyssa. We need to solve this. And not just Alyssa's case. There's a lot of people's cases that are people that are missing. People that have been missing longer than Alyssa, like Esther Smith. You know, there's a lot of people. So,
Now, I wanted to, sorry to cut you off right there, but I wanted to highlight something that you just said, you know, asking yourself, you know, what could I have done? Now, from everything that I've read, you have done quite a bit. You've done a lot in the following 10 years, in the following decade, to really keep Alyssa's story alive. I mean, like I said, you've done rallies, you've done public appearances and stuff like that. So let's kind of get into that, kind of talking about what you and your family have been up to in the decades since Alyssa's disappearance.
Well, once we figured out we were officially on our own, you know, we just started making flyers and putting them out everywhere. Instead of putting up the flyers, like just posting places, we started handing them out to people, going to malls, to parks, talking to people. You know, you talk to one person, have flyers, the next person kind of watching over you, what you're doing. And we were telling people, like, just take the flyer. If you don't want it, leave it in a public bathroom. Leave it somewhere public so that we can still get our word out. And some people were very helpful, some people weren't. We started having vigils for Alyssa. She disappeared in Kent, so we went back to almost every vigil we've thrown has been in Kent. We just tried to really make our community aware that we're still looking. There was rumors that she was found at one point, and that was false. So people didn't even know that we were still looking for her. We started getting T-shirts made. We started remembering the day that she disappeared as well as her birthday. So we have celebrations twice a year and just really including family and community. My mom's in AA, so she has this big network of friends. And, you know, my sister's married to a comedian, so they have this big network of friends. And we just started networking, and then eventually I got a call from Roxanne White, who works with MMIW, and she invited me to the 2018 Women's March. So a couple of my family members and I, we showed up, and before we knew it, they gave us a banner. They let us speak. We told our story, and they're like, "You'll never be alone again." And they just helped us. I mean, like everything. They increased what we already knew, but they just like amplified everything. They shared platforms that they had. And, like, I'm always on the road. I'm always in a different city, a different state with MMIW, doing MMIW stuff. So, they really just made this platform for us. And that was 2018. So 2019, we did the March on Washington against Roxanne White, myself, and a couple other MMIW families. And that's pretty much how we got discovered as far as nationally, got our story out there, was them sharing their platforms and taking us with them to different places. I didn't even have enough money to go, to be quite honest. And they were like, set up a GoFundMe. I was like, no way, I'll be super embarrassed. Da, 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 da. And sure enough, I did a GoFundMe, and people donated everything that I needed to make it there, have food, hotel, everything. They disappeared everything. And that's when our story hit national after that. And we got the truck and all that other stuff.
So you just mentioned that the truck. You're talking about the Homeward Bound project with they're partnered with Washington State Patrol and Camway Transportation.
Yes. So they were kind enough to have an opening on a truck. I don't know how our name came to them, but they called me and asked me if I was interested, and they were going to see what they were going to do. And then they told me to send them some pictures, and my pictures weren't quality enough, so I had another friend jump in, and she made sure I had quality pictures done, and everything worked out. It was just an amazing network of people, like amazing network.
So with being involved with the MMIW movement, I mean, you're, like you said, you're constantly traveling, you're constantly on the road. Now we've talked a little bit off air, and you are actually starting your own podcast.
Yes, actually, I'm starting my own nonprofit organization. I just got approved to the IRS to be a 501 on March 20th. So I haven't really opened my doors yet, but what I do have up is a podcast and the availability to help the families with flyers, distribution, different stuff in phase one if someone coming up missing. So I'm really excited about that. My doors will actually open in October. And whenever we get out of this quarantine, I can start looking for a spot and, things like that. But, yes, and my organization is more or less for any nationality, not just particularly the MMIW. I'm helping anybody that's within my reach that I can help in any way that I can help. As far as, conducting their searches, we have resources, lots of resources for different things. It just kind of depends on what they need. But it's basically a resource center for families of the missing, and we do help families of the murdered that feel like they didn't get injustice, so they can come in, they can tell their story on a podcast. 5 minutes after telling their story is out on all kind of platforms. I think I have 7 different forms that my podcast is hooked up to. Right now, I can't think of them all on the top of my head, but Spotify is one, Apple is another, but they're pretty much everywhere. So hopefully that'll help, because, we don't get a lot of attention, and there's people and families in areas, by the time somebody gets home to take you to the library, you got to hope the libraries are closed, got to hope no one's on the computer. So we're just bringing all these resources to them pretty much. We will have our own location for people to come to us, but we'll also go to people. Everything we have, our podcast things, our cameras, everything is able to be packed up and gone, travel with.
That sounds really exciting. Like you said, and our podcasts are very similar with this platform. What I'm hoping to do is just like you, giving these families that haven't been reported or feel like their stories haven't been heard, giving them a platform to really tell their stories or to just have the stories told. And I think that that's really important, especially with this day and age. I just heard an article, I was just reading an article earlier about how more people are listening to podcasts, and I think that with, like I said, our podcasts are very similar in that nature.
Well, I hope to collaborate with you. Just even, know that I know you when I hear your name. Hey, that's my friend. Cool podcast. Check them out. Listen, things like that. Yeah, I'm kind of shy, though. So I'm still kind of working on that part. I'm a little bit shy still, but I'll get there. Every day I kind of practice with myself and just kind of keep going.
So what's the name of your podcast?
My podcast is the same as my business. It's called Y-O, Imagine That. And I have a website, yoimaginethat.com, yoimaginethat.net. Once they put in Yo Imagine That in Google, all the podcast links will start popping up. I do own yoimaginethat.org. However, at this point, I'm kind of waiting till I open my business before I put that official one out there. Because I don't want to get swamped and not be able to help people. I'm just literally got approved. I'm just literally starting. So, I want to be sure when I put my .org up that everything's good to go, where families can call or families can come and they will have the resources. We will be completely ready to go. It's just this quarantine stuff kind of has us on a slow track. But it's really good because it's giving us time to practice. It's giving us time to get our books together, things like that you, when you first start a business, have to have done. So the worst part is over, the tax part and the IRS part. So we're good for a while. We can breathe for a minute. and now it's back to, doing things for Alyssa. There's another family particularly that I'm working with. I actually do have my first family. So I'm excited to be working with this family. And it's always sad when you get another family, you know what I'm saying? So I don't want to make it seem like that. But for my first family, for my business, I am kind of excited. And we'll see how it goes.
Well, I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you very, very much. And I appreciate all that you're doing. I wish you the best also. And just thank you for even taking the time to talk to me, to hear Alyssa's story, to inquire about it and help us get our word out. I mean, on behalf of my whole McLemore clan, her dad's side clan, everybody just thanks you so very much.
Oh,
we really, really appreciate it.
Well, like you said, hopefully in the future, we'll definitely, you and our podcast will have to collab, and we'll definitely have to hopefully meet sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely. I'll inbox you some stuff and make that happen. But I'll give you some better, some other stuff that I worked on. And, yeah. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Tina. So one last thing I definitely wanted to ask you, if Alyssa is by chance, or anybody that is listening to this, do you have any words for her?
For Alyssa?
Yes.
Oh, gosh, I have so many words for Alyssa. I guess the main thing that I would want Alyssa to know is that we love her, we miss her, and her disappearance is really hurting not just the family in the house, but the whole generation. Everybody had a different relationship with her, so it affects all of us different. Just because I'm champion her search doesn't mean that I'm the only one searching for her. She has lots of friends, family, cultural family. Everybody really misses her. And I don't want her to feel like it's been too long or to be scared. We're here for her. No matter what she's gone through, we know that she's strong, and I know that she knows her family is strong. So whatever it is, we'll get through it together. And I don't want her to, feel somebody's threatening her, that she's protecting us, because that wouldn't be the case. Her life should not be protecting us, but we can protect her, and we will by all means. But first we have to find her, and until we bring her home, dead or alive, we're going to continue our search. We're just not going to give up, period. And I want her to know that if she's alive, hang on, we're coming. If you're not, we're still coming. But she's going to come home one way or another, so just hang in there, baby girl. We're going to find her. And we love her, and we miss her.
Thank you so much, Tina. We'll have to definitely check in, and I'll definitely keep tabs, and hopefully in the future we get to talk again.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jordan. Take care.
Thank you. You have a good day.
Okay.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much to Tina. Great big shout out to Tina Russell for calling in to really, like I said, tell her side of the story. And it was very informative and helped me kind of understand a lot more about, like I said, these aren't just these faces on posters. They're not just faces. They're not just posters. They are people, and there are people that care for them and that miss them. So like I said, great big shout out to Tina Russell. Go check out her podcast. It's called Yo Imagine That, as well as her Facebook, which is facebook.com/Yo Imagine That. And just go out and show your love and support for her. And I think that's going to do it for the very first episode, the debut episode of One Missing, One Murdered, All Indigenous. Once again, I want to say thank you so much to everybody that subscribed and supported the podcast. Like I said, I'm out on YouTube as well as on Podbean. Great big thank you to Podbean for hosting this podcast. Hopefully, I'm getting to where I can get out to Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify, Google Play, but for now, like I said, this is the debut episode, and I'm hoping to get a Facebook profile made up for the page as well. So be on the lookout for that as well. But like I said, that's going to do it. And thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of One Missing, One Murdered, All Indigenous. Have a good day.